Good day, my name is Towser Dalal, and welcome to a webinar on seeking your Canadian CPA for International Chartered Accountants and how Prep Formula can help support you in your journey to obtaining your CPA. Firstly, a little introduction on myself. My name is Towser Dalal. As I mentioned, I'm going to run this session. I'm a CPA CA. I attained my Chartered Accountant designation in Canada several years ago. I'm a prep trainer and mentor for the last 5 years. I built and ran a very successful national program at Ernst & Young for over a decade. Prep marker, taught at CPA Ontario. We have a list here of various associated bodies that qualify for different exemptions under MOU, MRAs, etc. You can also find this on our website. And one thing to note is that the interpretations below, obviously, and opinions are my own. It's for illustrative purposes. There's no affiliation to CPA Canada, Ontario, or any of the other bodies. Okay. The basic outline today is we're going to talk a little bit about what is CPA PEP, the whole process for, just anybody. And then we're going to kind of segue into what is it for international trained accountants with your exemptions. What are the skills required to succeed at the exam? What are the skills that international students possess, strengths and weaknesses, and key success factors to succeed on the CFE, and especially given your background, and how Prep Formula will bridge this gap with what we provide in terms of technical support, case writing support, videos, webinars, one-on-one focus to help you through the process. Students that have an MOU or MRA generally either go straight to the CFE or they are given certain exemptions. Depending on where you're from, you may have to do Capstone 1, 2, and the CFE, or they give you the option to do Capstone 1 and 2 and CFE. So you're exempt from Capstone, you can write the CFE straight away. The CPA PEP process is basically, you start off with something called Core 1, Core 2, where they go through. Core 1 is FR and assurance. Core 2 is performance management accounting and strategy governance. And then you have to take 2 electives, meaning you have to take 2 out of these 4: assurance, finance, tax, or performance management. And all of these include a large component multiple choice, where you're challenged technical skills. And then there's a case writing component. So Core 1, I believe, has 1, and then you kind of build on cases from there. And then you segue into Capstone 1 and 2. They're both 8 weeks. All of these are approximately 8 weeks long, which lead to the CFE. Now, if you are exempt from the first 4 modules and you have to do just Capstone and CFE, or just a CFE, no problem. You can do it overseas while you're studying. You just have to be here for the examination. So a lot of people come here just a couple of weeks prior to the exam, or depends. There are various factors. Some people get their PR 3-4 months before and come here, so they spend half of the time studying overseas and then the other half here. Even though CPA Canada may give you the option not to do Capstone 1 and 2, we recommend you do Capstone 2, and I will discuss that in a little bit in detail later. Why? What is Capstone 1? It's a huge 30, 40, 50-page assignment, like a case study. They put you in groups of 4 or 5. CPA Canada picks the groups. You work in your local group, and you have to hand in assignments at a certain critical point in time, the first week or second week, 4th week, and so on. And then at the end, there is a group presentation. So you start off with a 2-day workshop, and then basically you're working online with your team till you do the group presentation. There is no final exam. Two key aspects of this are, it'll take you approximately 10-15 hours if you are in Capstone to do the work and assignment. If you're not doing Capstone itself and you're just doing the case by itself, probably half that time maybe. Prep Formula has a special webinar approximately a week, 2 weeks prior to Capstone 1, where we go through detailed approach to that specific case. What are the key assignments in there? How you should approach the assignments. So even if you're not doing Capstone 1, it'll give you a good idea of the case and what are the things you need to focus on as you're doing it on your own. So after Capstone 1, there's about 10-day gap, and you start Capstone 2, 2-day workshop again, where they do case writing skills. And then all you do is, again, online. Every week you submit 3-4 cases, a mix of day 1, day 2, day 3. They have deadlines, you submit them online, and then they mark, and it goes, and you get the marked case back. And so basically it's just practicing. And these are CFE prior year CFE questions that they do make you write and mark. Again, there's no final exam, but what they do is, I think about 2 weeks before, they will review your performance, and if it's not good, they'll give you the option to defer the exam for free. For free meaning there's no penalty. They'll say, okay, trying for the May, you're not performing well. If you want, you can defer it to the next writing, September, for example, in 2020. So for both Capstone 1, you're spending quite a bit of time studying the actual case, which means it'll cut back on your time you can devote to your technical and case writing for the actual CFE. Now, one of the things that Prep Formula does provide additional to our program is between Capstone 1 and 2, there's a 10-day gap. We have a 7-day live webinar that starts on, I think it starts on a Friday to Thursday. And we go over all elements of the exam. So we'll do sample day 1, day 2, day 3 cases, different types. You're given the schedule, you write the cases ahead of time, and we do the take-up, which is tremendous. It's great for students. They get insight into case writing at almost a CFE level. Like, we do it at the most difficult level at that point in time because you're close to writing the exam. And we also will focus on technical topics, whether it's FR, other areas, latest technical, most likely tested topics that have occurred in the past. We do reviews of that. So there's a blend of that into your process. What is a CFE? It's a 3-day exam. Day 1, 4 hours for Capstone 1 case. It's built on the Capstone 1 case. It's projected in the future at a certain point in time, and you're asked to identify and do certain high-level skills in there, answer certain high-level questions in there. The company may have grown, expanded, diversified, whatever, and you will answer certain questions. One of the key things that we do again is approximately 2 weeks before the exam, we do a webinar on actually writing the day 1 case. What are the key triggers you need to focus on? What kind of questions they're going to ask? What is the style or expectation of the answers? And so far, we've had very successful, I'd say an extremely successful pass rate for those who take our program and use the webinars for day 1. Day 2, it's a 5-hour in length. Day 1, you write 3 days. You can pass day 1 by itself. And then day 2 and day 3 are kind of another component. Day 2, it's a 5 hours in length, where there's a common component for the first third of the exam in financial reporting or management accounting. And then you go into an elective, means beforehand, 3 months, 6 months before, you choose an area of strength: assurance, PM, finance, or tax. And then the second phase of the day 2 exam will be focused on one of these 4 areas. So that's your role. They call it your role. And so the questions will be focused only on that. So if I pick assurance, my day 2 exam will have only FR or management as the common area, and then the rest of the questions will be focused solely on assurance. Or if I'm doing finance, solely on finance. Anyone in public practice has to go through the assurance route. Day 3, 4 hours in length, and they can be tested 3 questions, 70 to 90 minutes, and they'll be tested on all 6 competency areas. There are 2 offerings, one in May and one in September next year. I think this is only the second time they've done that going forward. Key success factors, well, there's an expectation from the Board of Examiners. So they kind of outline what are some of the things that they focus on or looking forward to. And every year they come out with a CFE report, which is a board report after the exam, after results are released, in which they will outline exactly what the board was expecting on the exam and where students did well and where they did poorly. The second is obviously technical knowledge is tested, and then there's case writing. And in terms of what characteristics you need to pass the exam is case writing support, consistent marking and feedback from a professional, how to debrief once you get the marked paper back, how do you improve going forward? There's obviously the other elements of hard work, dedication, stress management, your experience, support. And one of the key things is, now we've had about 5-6 CFEs, and there's a board report. And every year the board report goes through each of the days and each of the questions, and it identifies key areas where students did well and poorly. So there's almost like a pattern to the exam. And we at Prep Formula pick up on this pattern and we focus our webinars on it, considerable time on reviewing this. And so when we are working with students, that is what we focus on at a high level. We pick up on this pattern which discusses the user role objectives, technical knowledge, and then that is what we use to help build your skills going forward from when you start your case writing or your technical to the CFE. So what does a board want to test on the exam? Ideally, do you have the technical knowledge? Can you identify a user role, interpret case facts, that's very important, and tell the user how you can answer what they're asking given the case situation and case facts, and meet their objectives, meaning answer what they're asking. This is the key framework. This is a fundamental framework to all 3 days. And all they're doing is they're just basically creating new scenarios, new case facts, different technical topics are built into it. And that's what's tested on the exam. Now, there's a tremendous amount of material over the 6 competencies to cover. And it could take you 150, 200 hours to prepare. Given that you have work, a personal life that you have to balance, it's important for us at Prep that we focus more on the key topics that probably are expected or recur on the exam. So in the interest of efficiency, we can identify, let's say, 75, 80, 85% of the topics that probably are going to occur on the exam or types of questions. And then we focus our program on that. And then in order to maximize your time, we tell you that spend, again, about 80% of your time studying these topics. And then let's say there are topics which could be half, let's say, you spend less time on them, even though they may be important, but at least you have a good knowledge of this. Okay? So how do we maximize your case writing and technical preparation? We start the case writing at a very introductory level. We do it as groups, which are free webinars. We do it at 101. And then we incorporate more challenging, more details in the cases going towards the CFE. For international students who have not had exposure, your tutor will work with you one-on-one to start you on basic case writing. So there are a couple of basic case writing webinars that you watch, get some idea, and then you start the one-on-one. And the first couple of cases are done in extreme detail, focusing on the fundamentals with you individually. And we will focus on your reading, planning, and writing for you individually. And that's done with a blend of other case writing free webinars that we have. And then what we do is we give you specific cases to practice on your own with solution. So that kind of, as you progress along, that's how you improve. You do this case one-on-one with the mentor, practice a couple on your own, and repeat the cycle. For Prep Formula students, take advantage of any webinars, as many of them as possible, whether they're live or replay. The case writing webinars are planned to help you focus on certain skills. Again, based on what we have observed by the board. Our technical webinars are there to help you learn the technical, number one, and then towards the end of the webinar, we bring in a case writing component of how would this topic be tested in a case on the exam. And we then spend a bit of time on that. One of the most important aspects to remember, 2 key things are, you will not pass financial reporting if you do not know how to do the adjusting entries or use numbers on the exam. Application of case facts and numbers are expected in financial reporting because they carry over. So remember I said on day 2, you have a common area, FR or management, and then that FR analysis that you do will carry forward in parts of your elective, your second part of your exam. One of the big reasons for failure is almost a third of the students have issues making the proper entries or adjusting entries if there are errors. You cannot do well on this exam if you cannot do these. So at Prep Formula, fundamental learning step is from the very first case, tell me what the entries are going to be if you're doing financial reporting discussions and how to use the numbers. The major test over the 3 days is not only the variety of the cases, but how you weave your technical into building your case response. How do you use the case facts into answering the user needs? Case writing, like I told you, basic is user role required and the objectives. Now, another term for required, which I will discuss later, is called assessment opportunities. Once in a case, you can identify your user role and what you're asked to do, and then you see technical discussion points. Doesn't matter what it could be. By technical, I mean it could be financial technical, where you're doing some kind of present value adjustment, calculating what the costs are over 3 years, financial reporting, or some kind of management accounting calculation. How did not only did you identify, but then how did you apply the case facts and clearly follow through and tell the marker how that impacts the user? What is your conclusion? How you're using the technical to address how it impacts the user. So it's a blend of identifying. By technical, I mean it could be not only FR technical, but it could be management accounting, where you are doing, break even, or cost volume profit analysis, or in finance, cash flows, things like that. How you are integrating that with the numbers to come up with what you're being asked to do. Using case facts is extremely important. Now, the challenge here is, how do you learn to read, outline, plan a case, and then debriefing, the learning aspect. Once you've done the case, what were your weaknesses, what did you not do well on, and how you improve. So for many of you, case writing will be a totally new concept. It incorporates preparing yourself for multiple scenarios, roles, users, time constraint, writing concisely. There are multiple aspects to success on this exam. The key aspect here, and which prep formula is our biggest strength, is the one-on-one, where you're working with somebody who knows this exam inside out and can guide you on how to start doing your case writing. This is a key attribute that is required for any student. And our program is designed around this, helping you get started on this, where you work with a professional which you're matched with right from the time you sign up. Since many of the international accountants, now here is some of the pros. You have a sound knowledge base in terms of your technical. But the whole key part here is that in order to learn case writing, and I will talk a little bit more about the challenges of case writing, I've already given you a glimpse of 6 competency areas, multiple scenarios. You need to start case writing, a good 3-4 months before Capstone 1 deadline. Now, again, let me be very specific here. You may be doing Capstone 1 and 2 required, or you may be doing it because it's optional, or you may not be doing it at all. But the whole goal is, by the time Capstone 1 deadline comes, whether you're writing the May or the September exam, you want to be 60-70% there. Meaning, in terms of, you want to be there probably 80% technically and 60-70% case writing wise. Because then all you're doing is just doing more cases and just improving. That is why your first 3-4 months, your November, December, like for example, November, December, January, February, for example, also depending on whether you're writing the May or the September exam, you will spend learning the fundamentals of case writing, getting exposure to multiple types of cases. You need to realize this is not a technical exam. It is identifying the technical that you're going to use to address the user needs. That is important. They give you access to FR assurance and the tax technical, which you can access during the exam in PDF format, I believe. And you can cut and paste certain technical to use. It's the application of technical that is what they're looking for. So your technical is a good start, but case writing is absolutely critical, which takes a long time to master. And that is why I want you to be ready at a certain level come Capstone 1 and 2, because even if you're not doing Capstone 1, you'll be still spending 8-9 hours a week on the case, learning it. It's a 40-50 page case. Certain things about the case, you'll still be practicing stuff. So you won't be doing actual case writing. You'll be kind of solving that case, whether you're in a group or on your own. And Capstone 2 just hits you in a flurry. So I want you ready by a certain point in time. So even if you're not doing Capstone 1 and 2, you want to mimic, especially Capstone 2, which is a case writing course, you want to mimic that and do these as if you were actually doing Capstone 1 and 2. And that's the best way to prepare. Based on our experience, as I said, based on doing the board reports, we have a very good idea what it takes to pass. There are multiple levels in an exam within each required. For example, they mark you at 5 different levels. So for each required, they will ask you. So if they asked you, for example, to do quantitative analysis, how accurate was it? How were your assumptions? How many items, purpose, conclusion, all of those elements were in there or not, whether you did it reasonably accurately. Again, depending on your response, if you hardly had a response or you hardly identified it or you did it completely incorrectly, you're going to hit a nominal competent or not attempted if you didn't attempt it, which means you did not earn any points for it. If you attempted the discussion, whether FR or quant or finance, tax, whatever, if you made a basic attempt at it, you could hit a reaching competent level, which is you'd normally earn 2 points out of 4. And if you did an in-depth answer that they expected, which I just talked about, purpose, conclusion, case facts, all of that, number crunching, if there were numbers, then you hit competent, which means you get 4 out of 4 roughly. And then there's something called competent with distinction, which means you went above and beyond. And that's still gets you 4 points. The only reason it's there is because it separates people who are going to be on the honor roll from the other candidates. So our goal is to get you to competent. So again, like I said, reaching competent means you were able to identify and do a basic discussion. It could be a basic, or you did a few points you discussed, but not enough to hit competent. So again, there are different measures of within each area of how they would determine reaching competent and competent. Now to pass FR, management accounting, and your elective, you need to hit something called depth, which means you have to hit competent a certain number of times. And again, once you start into the process, you will learn more about it. At this point, it's not really that important. International CAs, regardless of your country, you have a significant strength. Whether you have done technical for a while or not, we find that you can pick up technical very easily. Okay, because of your work experience or whatever, or you've already done a CA overseas, so your ability to study and learn the technical is a strength for you. However, it's going to take a lot more in terms of case writing because you've had no exposure to it compared to students going through university here, and especially those that have done Core 1, Core 2 electives. This gap that you have that we help bridge will take a long time. Again, depending on the effort you put in to bridge and learn. Also, don't forget in certain technical areas, you may know IFRS, finance is common, management accounting can be common, elements of assurance are common, but things like tax and ASPE, which is Canadian financial reporting, those will be completely new areas for you to learn. So what Prep Formula mentors will do from day one is start working on helping you identify these areas, strengths, weaknesses, what are your gaps, how to fill in, what webinars to study, what technical to study, what pace to go at. And then how do we start with your case writing? So based on the background, okay, when do we start case writing? 2-3 weeks from once you do your technical, you can do basic case writing. What are the strategies you can adopt when you're writing cases? And so these are key things you need to start doing in the earlier part of your preparation. So working closely with somebody on your case writing, especially, number one, but also for technical, because there are so many, like I said, there's so much technical out there. So at Prep Formula, what we do is we condense and say, okay, we do our webinars on case writing. On technical and case writing. So we do a lot of webinars on financial reporting, technical, which is key, assurance or finance or tax or whatever. And we focus on areas, like I said, that are key areas to be tested on the exam. That will really help you build your skills, okay? Because you have only a limited amount of time. And then the other part is on case writing. We start you off with basic case writing webinars. And then because you have never written a case, our key focus one-on-one is we make you write the first case. The first case, you have two options. You can either write it, we mark it, and then we do a Skype debrief. where we go over the case with you and help you over all aspects of case writing, from technical weakness, strengths, to case writing, different aspects that I've already mentioned, user role required, case facts, how to use them. Or our other option that we give students is we give them a sample of a case which the mentor has already kind of made comments. So as you're reading the case, you also have my comments embedded in them, which will help you with the common elements of case writing. You go through that, and then together we do a Skype session and we learn how to read, plan, create an outline. How do we write it? How do we do the Excel if there are numbers? How do we discuss the adjusting entries? All of those elements. And then you go away and then you write out the answer. So this gives you a huge starting point. And then you do this either the first time or the first and second time. And then after that, you automatically have acquired the fundamental skills to then start writing on your own. So what we find at prep is that you start off your first case with almost no knowledge of case writing. You've done a couple of webinars, you're still unsure because I've given you a new case. Once you've done that, normally I find if you have done the work in your first 4 cases or so, 4 or 5 cases, the way we proceed is we do one case together, then you practice a couple on your own with the solution. So by the time you've done your second or third case with me or your mentor, we find that by the 4th case or so, there is a dramatic improvement because of the way we have done it one-on-one, specific to your needs. And there's tremendous, if you think about a graph, you're starting off with a flat line along the x-axis, and then all of a sudden it just, boom, it just skyrockets. Your learning curve improves so much. That is why I said you have to give yourself 4 or 5 months, 3 months, depending on your availability before Capstone on getting through this learning curve. Because once you've done that, a lot of these building blocks fall in place. Then it's a question of refinement. So how do we help you with the Capstone 1 case? It's a large case, as I explained, but what we do is we do an in-depth webinar on how to approach it. We have an extremely high pass rate in the 90s or above of those people. So we do a webinar before the Capstone 1 case. We do the 7-day webinar, we go over a day 1 case. And before the exam, we do another webinar on actually approaching the day 1 of the exam. What are some of the key success factors required and how to hit them? Capstone 2. So if you're going into Capstone 2, all Capstone 2 is writing 3 or 4 cases a week, submitting them to CPA, home market, give you feedback. So now if you're not doing Capstone 2, you want to mimic it, which means you have to do that on your own. If you're not doing Capstone 2, then you set up a schedule with your mentor. The mentor normally will mimic the Capstone 2 schedule. He'll say, okay, these days are the days you hand in these cases, and you would do that with your mentor. And he would mark it within 24 to 72 hours and turn it around. Now remember, 98% of people have done Capstone either once, or if they're a repeat writer, they're probably not doing it the second time, but they've done it at least once. You're exempt from it if you are. So you have a great disadvantage in that sense because Capstone 1 will give you this feedback. So in order for you to succeed, if you're not doing Capstone 2, you need to mimic it. You need to get the feedback. You need to have cases marked. That's where Prep Formula comes in. If you're not doing that, we will mimic Capstone 2 for you. We will take the prior CFE cases, similar, exactly what CPA is doing based on the schedule, and we'll make you write them and mark them. Now, whether you do it, it's really up to you. We cannot force you to do it. Same thing with CPA. In Capstone 2, there are some people that don't hand in all the cases. It's not mandatory in that sense. They miss deadlines. But you have to have the discipline to work at it, hand it in on time, get the feedback. And we recommend you do the Capstone 2 route if possible because it helps. So while you're doing Capstone 2, you can still take part in our webinars. You can still do a few one-on-ones to work on areas that you're not getting support, or because Capstone 2 marking is generic. They're marking, it's insane. Like there's 10,000 people writing this exam. There are people that are marking like 30, 40 cases a day. Whereas it's a lot different for us. It takes us roughly an hour for a day 3 case two and a half hours to do a proper job on a day one, day two case with the proper feedback, comments, and things like that. So our marking and support and feedback is it's more detailed just because we're dealing with a smaller volume. And that gives you a lot more feedback, improves your learning a lot faster, and it gives more in depth. So as I told you before, each case has what we call assessment opportunities, the requireds. Remember I said you need to know the user role and what the user wants, which is a required. So each case here will have assessment opportunities. So for a day two case, your assessment opportunities could be 5 or 6 in the common areas. So there'll be 5 or 6 FR discussion points. They can be, one can be revenue recognition, non-monetary transaction, property, plant and equipment, intangible assets, financial instruments, different things. And then you go into your specific role. So if your role is, for example, assurance, then you're going to talk about risk, materiality, approach, procedures, special reports, and things like that. If you're doing performance management, it's on strategy, performance measures of different kind, depending on case facts. Or if there are quants, it could be, just analyzing different options with qualitative and quantitative discussions. Or if you're doing finance or tax, applying the technical to do cash flows or doing specific tax calculations and things like that. So these are some of the things that you're expected to do on the exam. And so what I'm talking about here is just giving you a little bit of taste of what the assessment opportunities are like. So again, remember, for financial reporting, management accounting, and your elective, you're expected to go into depth, which is hitting competent. The other 3 areas, whichever the other 3 areas will be for you, will become breadth, meaning you need to hit reaching competent, so you don't need to go into that much detail. So depending on how they're testing it or what they want you to answer, again, attempting a reasonable answer versus providing me with a reasonable answer is a distinction between RC and C. How will we help you at Prep Formula? Obviously, we introduce you with free webinars on case writing, and then we go into the one-on-ones. You'll work with your tutor right from the first case. I've given you the 2 options, like I explained before, and that'll give you the basic skills. Then you build by practicing 2 or 3 cases on your own with the solution, and then say every 3 or 4 weeks we repeat the cycle. So that after about 4 months, before you hit Capstone 1, roughly that deadline or that timeline, you are already done maybe 10, 12 cases. So you have a reasonable breadth of exposure, depth of exposure in case writing, and you need that. So you're already now at that 50-60% level. And from there on, it's improvement, fine-tuning. Because don't forget, case writing is not only about that, it's about time management. How do I write concisely? Because in the 5 hours or on day 3, the 80 minutes or whatever, you are required to answer. For example, day 2, you could have 5 or 6 FR and then about 8 or 9 elective AOs required. So you're answering 14 potentially depth areas you're answering on day 2 in the 5 hours. And that includes your reading and planning time. You're constrained from time. Day 3, some people find day 3 even more time constrained. So on an 80-minute question, you could have 5 or 7 of these, and they could be different areas, any of the 6 areas, combination of them. That is what we are building towards. So by the time you're getting to part of Capstone 1, we want you there at a reasonable level already. So that is why throughout the year, or since you join, we start right away on the case writing also through free webinars and the one-on-one to get you to that point along with your technical. And then we have that 7-day webinar just prior to the Capstone 2 starting. And then either you do Capstone 2 or you mimic Capstone 2. Now in debriefing of your cases or in your case writing, these are some of the common elements that you will be asked to do. So what I've done so far is I've given you structure of the exam, what some of the things Prep Formula does. But the most important thing I want to drive home is the challenge of this exam. It's an extremely diverse, challenging exam. And I want you to really understand that learning this case writing takes, to get to a certain level till you're comfortable, takes a good 2-3 months, depending on how many cases you do, your time commitment. So now in your case writing, whether you some of these important factors are taken into the marking. Did you identify the assessment opportunities? Because if you did not, you're not going to get any points, zero. Doesn't matter how good the technical is, but if you did not know that this was, for example, a non-monetary transaction discussion, you didn't identify it, knowing your technical is not going to get you anywhere. Or if you did not know you had to do a contribution margin or a cash flow or whatever, and that was what is required, you're going to basically get not attempted for or nominally competent, 0 marks for that particular required. Another thing that we will focus on is how do we help you to get to reaching competent and competent consistently every time we mark. So this is what you wrote. This is what you needed to get to reaching competent or competent. I personally focus, you have to get to competent. That is your goal. Whether you got or you will get on the exam, there is no way you're going to hit competent on everything. If you do, you're going to be in the top 1% of the students. Great for you. But on the exam, because of the time constraints, even if you know that this is a required, because of the time constraints, you may only be able to write a little bit and hit RC on some, or even miss some AOs. That is why practicing more cases is important within the time constraint. So for each AO, are you demonstrating the enough depth or enough points or using enough case facts to get to RC or C? And that is what we're always helping you. Or when you are doing it on your own, are you able to get there? Now remember, at the beginning when we are doing case writing with you, your first case, your second case, your third case, you are not at the CFE level. So if you're doing a 90-minute case, for example, with me at the very beginning, I realize that you're starting at point 0. I recommend you take extra time. If it's a 90-minute case and you're going to devote 30 minutes to reading and outlining and planning, I tell you use 50 on the first case. Because if you cannot read and identify the user role required, identify case facts, and you try and zip through as if you're in the actual exam, you're going to miss a lot of things. And then same thing with writing. You're writing in the beginning, you're going to be writing things that are not relevant. You'll be very verbose, for example. So, because it's the very first case. So again, take more time. And then as you improve with each case and you learn and you rewrite the cases, that is where all of these skills will come in. And you will find, oh, you know what? My first case was a 80-minute case. And, it took me 120 minutes to do it. With each successful case, as you improve all these various skills, you will find yourself, each time you're improving 4 or 5%. You're cutting back on the time. So come Capstone 2 deadline time, if you're following the program, all of a sudden you find, you know what? I wrote these cases in 120 minutes, which are 80-minute cases. Now I'm 6-8 weeks away from the exam, and I'm doing the same cases, similar cases. I'm doing it in 80 to 90 minutes max. So that by the time you hit the CFE, you have refined it, whether with Capstone 2 or with your mentor or on your own as a combination, that come exam day or a week or two before the exam, you're able to hit the time management to as large a degree as possible. Some of the key steps, and I put the heading debrief, which is basically what am I learning? Or what do I need to be able to do well on the exam? Did I identify the user role required, AOs? Did I write them with the user objectives in mind? So for example, are you in a scenario where you're an auditor and you're looking at us given the case facts? Or are you an internal person and you're going to approach it very differently? Were there any indirect AOs? Did I support my analysis with case facts, recommendations, purpose, conclusions? All of these are key elements that we will help you from the very first case. These things are driven home into you. Did I make the right assumptions, purpose, conclusion for my quants? Was I too verbose? Did I repeat case facts? Did I write irrelevant things? Well, we help you start eliminating them in your debrief. Creating your outline, that's very important, especially day 1, day 2. You've been given 14 AOs. It's going to take you about 90 minutes to read and plan the case. So as you read each area, you're going, oh, here's one required, what they're asking me to do, FR topic. You'll put it in a short skeleton outline. So you will do that for each required. Then how do I keep refining my response to make it more concise, organized, so that I hit the time management and I'm doing exactly what is needed? It's a continuous process of improvement. Were there any links between the AOs? So for example, on D2, you could be doing FR, you do adjustments, and then those adjustments are needed to the financial statements. And based on that, based on the adjusted numbers, they're going to ask you to do some tax calculations, finance, management accounting, or do assurance discussion points. They don't have to, but they will to a certain extent. Are you able to do that? That is why I said doing FR well and the numbers is critical. What are the recurring scenarios, specific scenarios, whether it's an audit, whether it's in finance, and you have a basic template in mind once you've practiced enough cases. Another thing that they will always throw in challenges, and I'm getting into a bit of detail here, but you need to realize the significance of case writing and the challenges of it. Throughout the case, they will put comments made by the partner, the client, or somebody else in the case, where they will say that, oh, I do not know how to do this, or I have to choose between A and B. I do not know which one to choose, or I have already done this. And you will have to go in and answer it for them. If they've done it, chances are they've done it incorrectly, and you have to show them how to do it correctly. But whenever anybody makes any kind of comment, you have to address it. It becomes a direct required. So all of these things are what we will focus on. When you're doing your exhibits, it's critical. Exhibits take up a long time. That's one of the biggest complaints. Doing the Excel exhibits took up forever. And I never got time to do other areas. So not only did I do the relevant quants, did I do the purpose conclusion, but we will help keep you working on refining them. Did you support them adequately with case facts? What are consistent weaknesses showing up? So what we do in those situations is we give you extra cases to practice, old CFE or old UFE cases. If your weaknesses are doing quants, we can give you more practice cases with quants. If it's in FR, do that. If it's in assurance, doing risk procedures, we will give you additional cases to practice with different scenarios where you can practice on that. So this should give you a very, very good idea on how you need to write, what the challenges are of case writing, and what you need to do to master it really well to prepare you for the exam. On the next 2 pages are 3 testimonials from past students about prep formula. Myself, we now have about 3 mentors who are very good with international students. They've worked for the last year with a significant number of international students, and we are very comfortable. We know exactly what your needs are. In terms of prep formula, we have our website. You can go to our website. On the website, there are drop-down menus. There's a Start Learning drop-down menu. And on that Start Learning drop-down menu, there are various tabs which you can visit after you watch this webinar. There are topics there such as information for international accountants, what is CPA PEP, curriculum, what is a prep formula program, a little more detail, what kind of support you get, some pricing information. As for myself, I've put down my email address here. I'll put down my cell number. Best ways to get a hold of me is via email or WhatsApp, and we can take it from there. And then I can give you more information specific to your needs. You can also call our toll-free line at Prep Formula, and you can chat with somebody. If you want to speak to me specifically, like I said, you can directly contact me. But I want you to really recognize whether you're doing Capstone 1 or not doing. Again, you don't have to decide right away. Once you start doing some cases, you'll get a better idea. You don't have to pick your elective right away. A lot of people are still, should I do assurance or should I do PM? Or should I do PM or finance, depending on your background? We tell you, pick the elective which gives you the best chance of success, your strengths for the exam, not your work experience. For example, I've had a lot of students who had tax backgrounds and have gone on to do tax in Canada, but have written it in assurance because that was their strength. What we do is in the beginning, you're not sure. You do a few different cases in these different areas. And then you say, okay, this is what the exam will look like. If my day 2 will look like. Day 1 and day 3 are the same for everyone. Day 2, this is what the exam will look like if I am going to choose assurance or PM or finance or tax. Then you have a better idea, and then you can pick depending on your strengths. There is a lot more to our program, which obviously I don't want to go into. This just gives you a basic overview of the CFE, the 3 days. I haven't gone through the passing model. It's a little bit complicated. I've discussed, what are the key success factors, what are their expectations, how Prep Formula will help you. Prep Formula understands where the international student CAs are coming from, what support they need, what we can provide. Wish you all the best with your 2020 efforts. Whether you're doing Prep Formula or not, I wish you all the best. You're always free to reach out to me if I can answer any questions. We are always here to help you. I urge you to go to our website, take a look around, contact us. You can study while you are overseas and prepare for this exam. We have a lot of students, for example, that are writing May or September, and they're coming with their PR halfway through, like let us say March. So from now till March, they'll study overseas. We work with students via Skype on their timelines. So if you have to work evenings or weekends, we do that, the mentors. Or there are some students who, depending on when they're going to come to Canada, will write the CFE. They will come here 2 weeks before, study, write it, go back, get their PR, and then move here. So it varies depending on each individual. So I wish you all the best. And if you have any questions, you have my contact information.